let's get started with our another session in NAPA 2026 conference. Now we have an exciting panel discussion, and I'm happy to host here. Um, and in this session, I will go with our presenters and a lot of the presenters today, the panelists today, they were actually supposed to be online, but and they work in a startup and they are founders of some startups. And with this fast changing world, they have to be with their stakeholders or their clients or their investors, and they couldn't come to the Indianapolis side today. So let's get started with our today's discussion on AI in real life. What's actually changing? What's the hype? And what should you care about? Um, so let's start with this one. Raise your hand if you have not used any AI today. Okay, I see one hand, two hands. How about last week? Okay, so you really see any hands raised now, and people even may not realize whether they are using any AI or not, because right now in Google search, the first few buttons, few contents over there is part of the AI, right? So AI is not the future anymore, right? It's not a future technology; it's already here. So let's do some grounding. Yesterday, in a lot of our panel discussions, a lot of the concurrent sessions going on right now, almost every session there was something about AI. Recruiters talked about, hey, AI will skim your resumes, make a resume with AI. So what actually is the AI? So where we are with this one? And so let's level set where we are. So today's discussion brings together some leaders in the AI world who have built some AI systems, who have studied AI before the AI was even a mainstream. So we are going to start with this one. So let's start with this way. By this time you probably know me. You have seen me running around, but today, rather than the conference NAPA secretary and the conference uh, kind of the local organizer here, I actually represent data. So I'm passionate about data. I'm a director of EPD data at Inari. So I have some experience with the data, so that's why I'm leading this panel. So let's introduce our panelists. So panelists, so share me actually why the people in the room here should listen to you today. Who are you? And what kind of the perspective do you bring to the AI life? So basically, what the audiences should pay attention to. So basically, your background and your work on AI. So we'll start with Dr. Koidala.
Thank you so much, Anantaji. So yeah, I'm Caesar. I know Anantaji from when I was doing my master's in AI in 2006. So I was working in AI when AI wasn't big. Um, Last 3 years, I spent as director of responsible AI at United Health Group, where my team governed more than 1,000 AI models running in production. Based on that learning, now I'm building my own startup called HumanLens, a platform that acts as a pre-flight check for AI. That's what I call it, right? So we test for accuracy, hallucinations, fairness, compliance before AI is put into production. And I focus mainly on healthcare and finance industry. I also teach AI ethics at NYU and applied analytics at Columbia University. The perspective I bring is I sit where AI meets real consequences, decisions that affect people's health, money, and access to care. So, yes, I work in AI and I know how to build AI, but what I'm really worried about right now is how is AI going to impact your lives? And I know a little bit about it, so that's why you should listen to me.
Thank you. Dr. Koidala, and as my friend, I'll say, call for him Caesar. Okay, let's move to Dr. Rimal.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Anandadai. By the way, I live near Anandadai. I was supposed to be there, but I had some meetings, so could not come there. Sorry for that. So My background is in physics, and I have worked across different industries. So far, I had a brief stint at a startup company working in a tech domain where I was essentially applying physics knowledge to the beehives. So what we were measuring is measuring the bee health or health of the beehive using infrared imaging. So a combination of thermodynamics, statistics, data science, and then more recently, I have been working with building AI applications for students working in the education technology domain. So I have been in this space for some time. I interact with these tools a lot. That's the perspective I bring. Like, how are these tools being really used in like students grading, for example, or as a grading assistant, teaching assistant, how are these tools being used? So the real world application, and obviously I build these tools, I interact with these, and I know where the dangers are and where it can really help people. So that's the perspective I bring.
Thank you, Dr. Vimal, and Deepak. Now let's move to Dr. Paul.
Yeah, thank you. So I was also supposed to be there at the venue. I live in Cincinnati, so it's a bummer I couldn't make it. But hi everyone. So yeah, I am Prajwal. I have a PhD in AI and been working in this field for quite a bit now. I started as a research scientist, but now I have a company called Qualls AI that takes most of my day. So this is about kind of building the interface layer between humans and AI and understanding humans using AI, right? So that's how we position ourselves. So it's a way to utilize AI agents to deeply understand sort of humans that we serve, the stakeholders, that kind of stuff. I also run a consulting firm for deploying sort of like agents, AI agents specifically. So I'm in the weeds a lot across different industries. The perspective I bring is the question is not like if AI is really replacing any person or any kind of job role specifically, but I think AI is a point where it can bring the right kind of knowledge to the right person or organization before sort of like a wrong decision is made. So that's going to be my thesis and perspective. So yeah, great to be here, and also happy to answer questions as they come up.
Thank you, Dr. Paul. Rajul. So you probably already heard a few terms here. They talked about models, AI, agents, the different systems. So let's get some levels of people. Let's understand some AI jargons people use. For me, ChatGPT was AI, right? Like a lot of the people, ChatGPT is AI, or now with the Claude or the Gemini. So either you told about you work with thousands of models. What exactly are models? What do you mean by models, and why a single company have that multiple models? What's actually behind it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. For most people, AI became real in November of 2022 when ChatGPT went live and people started using large language models as AI models. But when I say I used to manage portfolio of about 2,000 models in AI healthcare, most of these models are not large language models. The large majority are small, narrow models that do one specific job really well. For scientists in the rooms and other academics in the room, these are just statistical models, right? I mean, we are coining new terms, AI and others, but these are statistical models. Some, like if you have studied AI, then you might call them classical AI models, right? So your regression model, your classification model, anything that does prediction, that is classified as AI. So we could go as down as your linear regression model is also an AI model because it is predicting something based on data, right? Um, and in practical sense, for everybody in the room, think about fraud detection or predicting hospital readmission or flagging claims for review, forecasting demands, credit card approvals, routing a phone call to a right place, Netflix recommendation. Literally, all of these use some kind of machine learning underneath, and that's AI, right? And that's why a company like United Health, which is at one point it was Fortune 5. They do a lot of things using machine learning, and that's why they have thousands of systems, I should say, that use AI in one way or the other, right? So that's the difference I would say is, um, you know, LLMs or ChatGPT are just a new visible layer that all of us know about, but for all these companies, corporations, AI was real decades ago, and they have been using some form or other form of AI. So yeah, a picture like an iceberg, right? So where now everybody's seeing the tip of the iceberg on top of your sea or ocean, and that's your LLM, but everything under that is pretty thick hues. That bulk of that underneath is unglamorous prediction models that nobody talks about. I'll stop there. I'm happy to take follow-on questions after that.
Thanks, Cesar. So I'll move to Prajwal. So we heard about this LLM, and a little bit he talked on the why LLMs feel different from the earlier machine learnings too. Uh, do you want to get anything on that one? And why LLM from Claude or Gemini or from OpenAI are different? What are these all these different kind of things?
Yeah, so like Caesar mentioned, so about for all of us, AI became very real because it was sort of like democratized with ChatGPT and those kind of things, right? So there are many things that are a bit different between these very general models that can answer any kind of question to like the narrow specific task model that Caesar mentioned. But for me, the real shift really is like it became conversational, all right, and it's doing something that people can just talk to another person or talk to an AI. It kind of bridged that gap. But fundamentally, LLM or large language models are predictors of the next word almost, right? So we call it tokens, but you have a sentence, you mask a word at the end and it'll try to predict the next word, the next paragraph, the next chapter, that kind of stuff, right? So it's a prediction model in the language space. And there is a thing called reinforcement learning that is done on top of this, which essentially take something that is predicting these words, paragraphs, and you try to tune its behavior in a sense, right? So just like how you train like a pet or something. So those two things are what makes an LLM system real, in that it can make these like very conversational, continue the conversation in a way, but is also tuned to be a helpful assistant, right? So that's what democratized AI in a lot of sense, because we can just open up a chatbot and start talking, right? You can ask a messy question, you can explain a situation, you can correct its answer. So you can do a lot of that. So it made it very easy for a lot of people to use. The danger right now, I think, with this LLM framing and the LLM type of AI is that because it speaks so fluently, it has language nailed down, right? Pretty much. It definitely writes emails better than I do. So people kind of assume that it understands very, very deeply. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it doesn't, right? So the fluency might not essentially mean that it is correct or an expert in a sense. So I'll leave that as a breadcrumb for us to kind of tackle later.
Thanks, Prajot. You talked about that, what is sometimes called hallucinations. So we'll come back to that later. So let's also do a little bit more on, I heard token, and we always talk about prompt. Deepak, can you please help us understand what is, tokens, prompt engineering, what does this mean? And this context windows, what are these different kinds of mini model? What are these?
Yeah, sure. So when these LLMs that these LLMs process text, they process these text not as one word at a time, right? The tokens is the smallest unit. The LLM processes these texts. So roughly 3 to 4 characters. Characters are tokens. So the a word may be broken down into a number of tokens. And when we talk about prompt, these are essentially like the input we give it to these LLMs. So this could be any text we paste to a chat window, a chatbot, or any file we upload. All of that goes into what we call a prompt. And the context window is what is the how much input plus output it can take at a given time in one pass. So uh, and it the task it can achieve really depends on how much input it can take, right? So with these newer models that are coming online, they have really extended these context windows so that they can take a lot of text, tens of videos, photos, text, all of that. So when we talk about context length, it is the maximum input plus output it can process. So sometimes what happens is you are chatting with a chatbot, and all of a sudden it just does not quote unquote remember what you were talking about. So that happens when your previous text just goes out of the context window. And some of these models, they have really done these crunching these reducing these summarizing essentially they get closer to the context length, hitting the context length, so they summarize, feed it back as a summary. So there have been a lot of work going on around like how we can feed as much information as we can, but yeah, there is a lot of work, research being put together on extending these context windows.
Thanks, Devanshu. One context I will take is describing LLM to somebody is just like talking to my 2-year-old kid. When I say twinkle, twinkle, he will automatically say little star. He has heard that so many times, right? So after that twinkle, twinkle, he thinks that the second word, that next word is little star automatically. So that's like a lot of that what it has seen, and that's kind of how I understand LLMs. So let's move to, so I think by now we kind of understand what the basics on the AI values. So now let's get here. So I'll ask our panelists one by one, what is one real world use case of AI you believe genuinely useful today? Not futuristic, not hype, but something that is on. So I'll probably start again with Dr. Deepak. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So one of the use case that I usually point out is the work we did put together very recently. Not recently, like last year. We deployed it last year. So we deployed it as a grading assistant for the teachers. So our company works on English language arts and space, and so there are some question types where a student have to construct a response based on the passages they read, and teachers manually used to grade those based on certain rubric, right? So what we did is we put this grading assistant as an assistant to the teacher, so that explains, it evaluates the student answer, how well it meets the criteria of the rubric, and then it scores based on those rubric. So this is a so far we have run about 4 million student answers through the model, and we are obviously not putting these models in charge of the student scores. We have a teacher in the loop. So the final say is teacher. So every answer, it goes through these models. The teacher are required to either approve it or reject it, and they have the full authority to actually change the score. And what we have seen is about 80% of the scores are actually being accepted by those teachers. And when they change the score, they either increase by 1 point up or 1 point down. So within plus or minus 1 point accuracy has been around 95%. So I feel like this is one use case where it is real out in the world and actually being used. And if you have kids in one of our where our product is available in one of the school districts, then it is highly likely that this they have been evaluated using these tools that we have in the world.
Thank you. Now I'll move to Prajwal. Same question. Something that's on use today, not futuristic, not high, but it's already working.
Yeah, so thank you. I promise I'll talk about the interface layer between humans and AI, and that's what excites me. So I'll talk about that. So at my company, we do AI assisted, almost in-depth information collection from humans. So this is about like amplifying voices and really finally listening to people at scale. Used to be that we used to do a lot of surveys to get these almost like quantitative, right? You have like numbers, you have a question, are you satisfied? Yes, no, or a Likert scale or something. But I think a lot of that is changing now because now we can finally just listen to everybody and listen to them in a very personalized way. So we can do interviews basically with people, right? The AI agent, which is doing the interviews instead of humans trying to figure out who's going to call what, trying to figure out the schedule. We found that it's actually a better experience overall for people that are being listened to as well, because it follows their schedule, right? It's non-judgmental, and it can ask follow-ups, adapts, listens. It can work across languages. So we are finding a real unlock in terms of finally sort of being able to make decisions that are based on data, but not just that, based in the depth of data, right? So this is one area I think where we'll see more and more use of these like live AI agents, and it's relatively safe. I mean, there are some risks and stuff, but it's like relatively safe and very, very productive, right? Otherwise, I mean, these are examples of things that we would never do if there was no AI. So it's also very encouraging. I think, I mean, you guys might also think about how it can apply to your industries and agriculture, and maybe listening to farmers or something. Would happy to chat about that. But that's where I'm seeing a big tick in benefits.
Thanks, Prajwal. Let's move to Caesar.
Yeah.
Something futuristic, not high, something already working.
Yeah. It's a loaded question. There's so many great use cases, but given advancement of LLMs, if I had to pick one, it'll be around the realm of what Prajwal is talking about, right? So anything that has to do with language. So I would say something like language translation. Amazingly beneficial, especially for immigrants and others, right? And that's a solved problem now, right now, right? Right now, language translation is a solved problem because of the advancement in AI, because we focused on language. LLMs are literally language machines. And anything that has to do with language, as interview, as Prajwal was saying, or language translation, those are, I'm really interested, like how people are using them now, because that's a solved problem now, I would say, mostly.
any of the panelists, any of the use cases, because a lot of audiences here from the agriculture background and the agriculture and allied sciences, anything you have seen on the agriculture area with the sensors and other things, or anything that's a lot of the surveys in the socioeconomics and even in the governance kind of world and the security, any examples on the agriculture you guys can think of?
I'm happy to speak on one. So I'm currently going through a cohort of AI engineers building systems for helping economically disadvantaged people, and one of the teams is working on um, helping farmers with predicting, you know, seasons and predicting rainfall and all of those kind of things, which AI can do pretty well now, right? So that's one thing that they are doing, but then what they are also doing is kind of like putting that information in their hand easily. So now you can interface with WhatsApp and other interfaces and provide them information in real time. And this is going to happen. Be prepared. This season will be different than other seasons. So I saw a real time impact of AI as they are building this for farmers. So that was one example that come to my mind. Otherwise, I'm not very familiar with the field, but because they are in the same cohort, I saw that app that they are building for farmers in rural India, which I think was fantastic.
Yeah, I can pile on to that really quick. So we I also do a little bit of like advisory kind of work in AI agents, as I mentioned, right? So right now I'm engaged with a company that does utility inspections for pole like utility pole health and stuff like that, right? So a lot of these inspections are being done by drones, and it has been this way for quite a bit. But they were not able to train these sort of like narrow AI models fast enough to detect defects, right? And the consequences can be disastrous, like wildfires, right? 13, 14 billion sort of losses in one event. So what I'm trying to help this company do is to try to use what we call like visual reasoning. So now, as you know, in ChatGPT, you can drop an image and kind of like start asking questions about it, right? So as a quick way to start mitigating these issues at scale, right? So I think there'll be parallels to this in farming and agriculture as well, where there's equipments everywhere, right? We want to monitor the health, and more we'll start seeing edge sensors like drones and stuff like that everywhere. So we can build in these with the AI today, like Caesar mentioned for translation. I think with the AI today, there's so many low-hanging fruits out there that we can solve very, very quickly in this domain.
Yeah, my experience was like pre-LLM era. I worked on ag tech startup. The way it was not really LLM based. The LLM was not a big thing. It was a deep learning, object detection, and classical type of machine learning, XGBoost type model where we were collecting this data from the beehives. So we had put sensors on the beehives, measure temperature and humidity data inside those hives as a way to monitor the bee health. And we would also take these infrared images, thermal images of those beehives, and then use those images to essentially, obviously, it starts with detecting that beehive from on that image visually. Using the visual signals and then use the thermal image part of it to actually build the heat signatures and then predict oh this beehive has like this colony size. They measure it in frame of bees. So essentially, oh, this hive has a no bees versus 7 frame of bees versus 20 frame of bees. So because these bees are very good in thermoregulating their temperature. So it was exciting, but it has nothing to do with the current what we currently know as AI. It's classical machine learning model.
Okay. Thank you. So now we've heard about some of the practical uses and the current uses. Let's go a little bit about the hype. What's the hype on the AI? how we should move there. So I'll probably start again with Deepakji. We are here into this vibe coding thing. People seems like they can put an app in like under maybe half an hour, and they seems like, hey, I made an app, I do this, it does all that and everything. From your experience, demos can be impressive, right? How does it separate from the demos to the real world application and where it is hyped?
Yeah, obviously, that's a pretty good question. So obviously, anything works well in demo because you actually designed it to be a demo, right? Carefully selected data, and you have removed all of the uncertainties that could be in the data to demo it. Versus in the demo applications, so the hard part is already done. Versus when you go out in the real world data is messy, it's challenging, and you see that mismatch, this gap between what you demoed versus what the model has to see in the real world. It's really different. Just extending on what I was talking earlier, we obviously even in that model, you can imagine we collected a lot of data in the lab. With the lab with the carefully picked beehives, but when you go out in the real world, you have all sort of beehives, and obviously the first thing you run into is the environment, right? The environment. Did it rain yesterday versus today? You are taking the picture of that same beehive. The wood had changed. The humidity had changed. So I think, yeah, I had a funny incident. So we deployed this model. So this pollination season in California is in February. So for whole month of February, and it's cold. Obviously, the temperature is cold there. We deployed the model first day of the picture taking. It seemed to work really well. The next day, what happened? All of a sudden, the model started predicting all zeros. Certainly, there was some problem, and the issue was that the temperature sensor that they were supposed to take on the field, they left it on the car, and it was the temperature collected was the car temperature rather than the outside ambient temperature. And obviously, we had to correct for that. Yeah, those sort of issues, right? So while what you test in demo versus what the model encounters in the real field is obviously you you want to be very careful about how you are demoing versus what the data or the model will encounter in the field.
Thank you, Debasi. Now let's move to Roswell. You talked about the AI agents a lot. You talked about AI agents. So please introduce us what AI agent is, and then can you please talk about AI as an agent on where are they now? What is the real on the AI agent side, but what is the hype actually on the AI agents?
Yeah, okay. So AI agents is if for those who know programming, right? So the way I like to think about AI agents is it's a while loop. So essentially, what it means is like we have a let's say like ChatGPT message window, right? We have some kind of intelligence we can ask questions to, and we put a loop around it. So it's essentially going like over and over again, and it has access to that model to ask many questions as it's figuring something out, right? So that's the loop, which is it can repeat the things. And there is a concept of memory so that it remembers what it's doing. And then there are some tools which lets it do actions in the world, right? For example, book a ticket or send a drone out, right? Or ask a follow-up question. In our case, or use a calculator, for example, right? So those will be tools. So an agent is just a combination of these, right? So there's an intelligence that makes a decision based upon the input it receives. There's some tools that can actuate, change things in the real world, and then get some information in from the real world. And there's some sense of like memory, right? So this is the simple kind of explanation of agent, and it gets more complex from there. So the hype thing that I see a lot is that although agents are super useful, like I use it all the time in the companies and then in the engagements that I'm in. The hype part is that it is at a state where it's ready to replace sort of subject matter experts or humans, right? In any way, shape, or form. The reality is that it's already useful in a lot of things, and it can replace a lot of tasks, not necessarily like the entire job, right? So it can replace a software engineer, for example, but it can do a lot of the tasks more efficiently that a software engineer does. So there is like other things that the human should probably do. And the last thing I'd mention here is that I think just like humans will need agents, like agents will need humans in a way. In all the work that I've done, there is this special kind of supervision that these agents need. If they are in production writing your emails or something, obviously you want to like look at the result before sending it, but it also goes off rail, at least the agents of today, right, in unexpected ways. So there's a human supervision that is needed for the agents, just as like agents are improving the productivity of humans. So yeah, that's all I'll say.
Thanks, Sojo. Now I'll move to Caesar. Again, what's the hype? What the companies or organizations have to think before implementing it to the scale? Where is that hype on every company being AI first? What do you see?
Yeah, I think we have read studies now where since 2022 to now, AI first became a mandate for most leaders in the companies, and they kept on pushing AI. What we saw was most of these systems didn't move from pilot to actual production models because they didn't see the real benefit of using them. And the problem is just, pretty real because, there's a saying where you have a hammer, now you're trying to find nails, and that's what they did. They didn't say, okay, this is the real use case for large language models, so let's use large language model there. They said, here, entire company portfolio, go use large language models, and of course that wouldn't work, right? So I would say that that's the hype that companies building large language models are selling. And I agree with Prajwal when he says, your task can be automated, but automation of job is hard. And that's how we look at, like, I work in workforce development as well. And the way we see a job or an occupation is it's a bundle of tasks, right? There are multiple tasks you need to do to perform a job. So that's why now we say software engineers are at risk because a lot of tasks that software engineers can do can be automated using large language models. Not entirely, but a lot. Yesterday, when I say yesterday, 5 years ago, manual jobs were at risk because we thought robots were automating a lot of manual jobs, and so they were at risk. And my thesis basically said software engineers are not at risk in 2020. So it's the script has flipped, but I still say it's hyped when people say we can automate everything. We're not there yet. Another hype that we keep on hearing about is AGI, this general intelligence, all be like know all, do all kind of AI, and people are trying to sell that. Uh, I don't think we are in the right path to build an AGI. LLM is one aspect of AI, not all aspects of AI, and people are just focusing on it for monetary reasons, I would say. So those are the hypes. And then another one I would say that's tricky is again what Prajwal brought up earlier is even now because of the limitations of large language models as well as hallucination, which we haven't dived into much. We always need human to guardrail the output and make sure that they are right. So scaling this up at enterprise level is just tough because of that. You just don't have the verification layer built. And companies like mine are actually working on that right now, but we are not there yet, right? So unless we build that trust level where, even the non-deterministic nature of LLM can be controlled in some way and we can be confident about its result, it won't be where people are claiming it is right now. Um, Yes, let's just I'll just stop there for now because I can talk about it for hours. I hate how people are hyping this right now.
So you can see here our speakers, our moderators are very experienced in these things with a lot of things and a lot of the discussions. So let's move to our kind of the third part is using. So what's kind of next, right? And so maybe I'll ask moderators, the panelists again, on two angles. One is a lot of the audiences here are students. Our AI set future, AI future. And also with the professionals, we have a lot of the professors and academicians and industry professionals here. If they want to adopt this practically, if they want to adopt that, and for students, when they want to be ready for that AI safety future, what is something they should start doing now, and what is something they should not be doing? I'll start with Caesar.
Yeah, yeah. Happy to. First thing I would say is please use it. I mean, we are, talking about all doomsday and everything and being bad, but the benefits of using it is amazing, right? I mean, I use AI for almost everything now, preparing my lectures, preparing deck, writing code, doing research, preparing images for my podcast thumbnails, you name it, literally everything. And I have Stack for doing that. So start using it because it'll make you 10x productive. It'll definitely, help you. It's almost like having five interns working for you doing things. And I say intern for a reason. Interns are super confident. They are very energetic, but they don't know everything, and the result and outputs could be wrong. But they're very confident, right? I mean, they just went to great school, and and they will give you an output saying this is great. You have to verify it. That's why I said intern, right? So what I would say is go use it for everything that you are doing right now, and you can use almost everything at this point for a desk worker, for a knowledge worker. You can use it for many things, right? And what I would say is, though, like treat it as a confident intern's draft, useful, fast, worth checking before you rely on it. Never let it be a single source of truth for high stake fact. If you are, doing a scientific research, make sure that look at the citations and go through them because it hallucinates. It will even make up a paper. I've had a situation with my friend where going back and forth with LLM, disagreeing with it. LLM presented a paper. He went there and read it. It was written by an LLM at that instance. It made up a paper to make it his point. So treat them as some, a technology that can make up things to, um, make the sequence of conversation work. That's what they do, right? So I would say those are the kind of things that I would want you to be careful about: the verification of your workflow, verification of output, because the more confident the answer sounds, usually the more it is worth a second look, I would say, with LLMs, today's LLMs, right? So yes, a piece of advice for students, for colleagues would be use it. Please use it. Try it for your own task because it's super helpful, super useful. Um, I have even given some permissions to my I've built agents for sending emails and other things, but I've given just the read only access, creating draft, like things like that. Like make sure you have guardrails in place and read the drafts before you send it, right? So yeah, use it carefully is what I can say to students as well as colleagues right now.
Thanks, Caesar. Same question to you, Prajwal.
Yeah, so Cesar already covered a lot of the things. I think like it's very, very important to use it, right? So that's super important because if you don't use it, you don't realize where how good it is at certain tasks and how good it is not. So one of the interesting, strange things about AI right now is like the edge or the frontier is very jagged in a sense, right? It's somewhere it spikes a lot. It's very, very good at coding, for example, right? Because it's what we call a verifiable domain in that, hey, you can write a code, you can verify it works. So the progress of AI is very, very high. So that's one aspect. Is it verifiable or not? Then if anything that you do is very easily verifiable, then AI is potentially very good at it already, right? And the other aspect is like, what is the monetary sort of rewards for these very large companies or these labs, right, to build on it, right? So if it's coding again, right, it's huge unlock that is possible there. And so they've been working on it a lot, right? So it'll be very good at those domains. But going back to Caesar's point, like we have to continue to use it for our own use cases and really figure out what the spikiness or the jaggedness of that frontier is, right? So if you're using it for your own purposes, I would almost do like, hey, I want to do this task myself, but I would force myself to go to an AI and let's see how it does, right? So I know the next time I'm faced with that task, I make that choice, and I make that choice over and over again because the AI is changing so fast, right? So the AI of last week is not the same as AI of today. So, I continue to have these like side parallel tracks of the same task with multiple LLMs, with myself, just because I want to assess, like, is this task ready to be automated, right? So kind of understanding where the puck is going is like super important. And the only way you'll do it is by using it, right? I think it's also a good positioning when you go look for jobs as well for the students out there because hey, you can build a prototype, you can build like something that is working, you can solve a real problem that just reads very well when you're in front of another person that is trying to solve a problem by hiring you, right? Yeah.
Thanks for the Deepak, same question. Something our professionals here and the students.
Yeah,
Something
sure.
is
So
pattern.
with the as the use of AI increases, obviously, one of the thing I'm noticing is subject matter expertise become really valuable. So it will increase as we automate some of these manual tasks, then the verification layer that Prajwal and Cesar talked about, that verification layer, obviously, one verification layer is the subject matter expertise, right? So if you are a professional, then you know your domain so well that you can immediately identify where AI just made stuff up or did something wrong. So the obviously critical thinking ability, we need to train ourselves on critically thinking, critically evaluating the AI outputs. The other thing I have been noticing is that so what happens is the gap between people who actually understand how AI works, their productivity increases by a lot versus people who do not understand how these systems work, then they may be chasing the rabbit hole, right? Because if once it goes off road, the off rail, it is really hard for it to keep it back, bring it back on track because of the context it has, and when you pollute that context, it's hard to keep it back on track. So uh, those stuff I suggest increasing your expertise would really do well with what you are good at and try to automate away some of the manual tasks that is actually holding you back, right? Like Cesar suggested, I really like that framing, that treating it the AI outputs as a first draft, initial draft of a confident intern. I occasionally have used the word useful idiot.
Great. Thank you very much. Our time is up. So one thing probably, I couldn't take more questions. So sorry about that. But again, I have now we have seen all of these entrepreneurs and people working on data. So please connect with me. Please, I'll share their information. You can connect with them with any if you have any use cases you want to really build or any questions. So with that, I would like to thank our panelists again, Dr. Paudia, Dr. Rima, and Dr. Koirala, joining our session in the NAPA 2026. And as Ananta, I'll also take off. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for
Thanks.
inviting
Thank
us.
you.
Thank you for inviting.